Welcome to All Things Travel, Trendy and Stylish. I'm Louise Scoble and this is Trendz Travel. Now, speaking of stylish things, this year Trendz Travel had a front row seat at the SA Style Awards. This is Mzansi's most prestigious event where style icons and fashionistas come out to celebrate the best personalities in the industry.
Style is a way of expressing who you are without having to say it out loud, and no one is more fluent in that language than those nominated at this year's SA Style Awards. Marking their 22nd anniversary this year, the Style Awards were held at the Diamond Walk in Sandton, north of Johannesburg. And those who stood out in different creative spaces like fashion design, film and television, and social media, to mention a few, were recognized.
What is different about it is the wonderful individuals that have all received their accolades and who we're celebrating tonight for their very inspirational careers. So the Style Awards has been synonymous with a big celebration for 22 years, and this one is just another stamp of magic.
First winner of the evening went to New Age Tsonga rapper Shoma Jozi.
For me, I'm just giving it all to the women that came in my whole culture, not even just my family, but all the women before me who innovated what we now know as Tsonga fashion. The women who tattooed their faces, the women who did screaming color block before it was fashionable. Those are the women that inspire me daily, whether I'm wearing direct Tsonga attire or whether I am altering Tsonga attire to fit my everyday life. Those are the women that have given me style, that have given me inspiration and continue to give me inspiration. So it just means that those women are being acknowledged. That's what I take this award as.
Most stylish fashion designer went to Rich Mnisi, aka Mr. 2 Million.
I'm very happy, I'm very excited. I feel humbled by it. Of course, it's always great for your work to be recognized, so yeah, I'm very happy.
Music power couple Nandi Madida and Zex Mandwini took home the most stylish couple.
Well, first of all, anyone who knows Zex knows he's always been stylish, and I literally just followed. It just means that we have a great synergy, man. We don't try force it. We're very private generally, but we love style, but it's organic, it's authentic, and that's what it means. It shows our love for each other and love for style.
I think it's one thing that I know I have. I don't know anything about fashion, but I know something about style. And my wife knows a lot about fashion, you know. She's a fashion designer. She's actually an international fashion designer.
With only 2 years in the film and TV industry, Linda Mtoba walked away with the most stylish performing artist in film or TV.
To win a Style Award for me, as someone who's fairly new in the industry, it means quite a big deal. I mean, because someone who's always been told that I haven't done enough yet, or I'm not doing enough, it means that I am enough as I am. And the fact that the work I'm putting in shows, so I really appreciate it.
Style is so personal and entangled, but what does it mean to these creatives?
I think that's the key point of like the industry really. It's how people put together their clothing. It's like the style you have, what makes you. So I think it's like almost like the most important part, and I think that plays a huge role in how I design and how I style my collections and how I style myself. So it's really like, you know, drawing out who I am and also just the clients I'll be working with.
What style to me, I think, is what style has always been. You could always tell who a person was by what they were wearing. Like, you could come up to me and I would say, Mutoki Musud or Mutoki Muped. I think that's what style always meant in every group and in every culture, you know. It meant that you identified yourself, and it doesn't have to be limited to tribe. Like, you can look at someone and say, I can see that you're Muslim. Like, you can look at somebody and say, I can see that you're Hindu, you know. It's supposed to show your identity to a degree, and you're supposed to say, this is who I am. And who I am is a young African woman. And yes, I'm globalized, and yes, I live in a globalized world, but I don't believe that globalization needs to exclude my Africanness.
Fashion trends come and go, but what is the secret when it comes to your style?
Just being yourself, man. I always find it strange when people try too hard to be stylish or just have fun, man. It's clothes. Just be you. Yeah.
We never wanted to be like the best style couple. You know, we didn't do a campaign to be like, you want to be a style couple. So we were like honest with what we do and how we wear our clothes and the love of clothes. I think both myself and my wife, we really love clothes, man.
My style secret would be find something that works for your body, something that you're comfortable in. Most importantly, you have to be comfortable what you wear, because if you're not comfortable, you're not going to have a good time in it. So that's besides the point, you know. You have to be proud of what you're wearing, and you have to be able to work it for yourself. Just because someone else wears something doesn't mean it's going to work the same for your body, you know what I mean? So it needs something that you're very, very comfortable with, that fits your personality as well. So when it comes to style, it has to be about you, what you think is nice.
In Coco Chanel words, fashion fades, but style remains the same.
Now guys, if you consider yourself a fashionista or one of the fashion elite, why don't you send us your pics and videos on Trendz on SABC using the hashtag SABC News. That's on Instagram and on Twitter.
They say cricket is boring. Tata Joma, you and your friends, all of this sweet bowling, and all this music. Thank you, LKG. Come on, Nana. Bring moody. I do. They say cricket is boring. This is T20 cricket like we've never seen it before.
Fast fun for all. The Mzansi Super League. Live on SABC3 and SABC Radio.
Join the Trendz travel team this Saturday as Celebe explores the beauty of the Ghanaian arts and culture. Eloise traded her heels and makeup for running shoes at South Africa's first Spartan Race Challenge in Muldersdrift, west of Johannesburg. Music takes center stage at the Nyrox Sculpture Park in celebration of Tata Nelson Mandela's centenary. For all this and more, tune into Trendz Travel on SABC News at 5:30 p.m. and repeats every Mondays at 5 a.m.
This is a space for every woman in South Africa.
I want to speak to the women who cannot walk a kilometer in this country without looking over their shoulders, without being groped or harassed.
I was not born like this. In 2011, I got stabbed by a boyfriend.
How many centimeters? How many centimeters long is the political will to end the scourge of violence against women, against children?
I was locked up in the room for 2 weeks.
There are measures, there are laws, there are policies. But these policies and measures and laws do not speak to these lived realities.
We must fight the culture of gender-based violence.
This is where young men must be taught that women are not their footballs. This is where young men must be taught to respect women.
For centuries, art has been used as a form of freedom of expression for many, and this year Sanlam hosts the 100 Years of Art exhibition.
The exhibition tries to give an idea of South African art from around about 1980, 1920, right to the present. And one can talk about the exhibition in terms of showcasing how art has changed, how South Africans have responded to making art, how they've responded to the landscape, how they've responded politically over the time in the 60s and 70s, and how they are responding to the current social situation in South Africa. Well, the company wanted to build a representative art collection. And of course, in 1965, what was considered representative is quite different from what it is today. So they bought some very good pieces by well-known artists of that time. And over the years, they've continued to acquire works gradually and build a collection. There are now 2,000 items in the collection over a period of 53 years that they've purchased it. And it broadly represents what South Africans have done over that century. So our earliest works, which aren't on display here, are from 1874, and the most recent is from 2015. The purpose of the collection really is multifold. One is, of course, having collected over such a long time and obviously built such a representative collection, it's really part of the heritage of this country at some stage. And I think a lot of people see the collection as being a custodian of that heritage. I think the long-term view on this is that the collection should expand to represent South African and South African artists. So this section of the exhibition is really about early South African painting. So in the late 20s, early 30s, artists like Irma Stern. There's a painting of a portrait of a young girl from 1939. This is from 1949. Brought a completely different aesthetic. These works aren't real. They're very lasciously painted. They come from an expressionist tradition, a tradition that developed in Germany and evolved a style of painting that was exuberant, colorful, but also very, in a sense, challenging to people. So an artist like her and Maggie Loubser weren't accepted initially in that time, but they were superb paintings. They sort of grabbed the imagination, because real art isn't about trying to reproduce reality. Why would you want to do that? But the most valuable work that you're looking at here is this one by Irma Stern, and the most sort of celebrated work in a sense. But of course we've got other artists that come to work and get recognition in the 1940s, such as Gerard Socata, and so on. So these are sort of the icons of early South African painting that you see good examples of. The two works there, the one by Irma Stern and Maggie Loubser, are exemplary portraits by the painters. And what is so fascinating about, for instance, the Stern is the use of color. If you look very carefully, there's this green that she's been able to manipulate. When I was speaking to a group of children, I said, how many greens do you have? You look in your pencil box, there are 3 green pencils, but look how many she's been able to generate there. And the expression that she gets in the child's face is sort of melancholic, but also there's some sort of serene calmness to it, in a sense. The other one next to it by Maggie Loubser is a self-portrait. And also the use of color is very dramatic. Not realistic at all, but it gives expression to this person. It gives a certain strength to her. And she was an incredibly strong woman, like Irma Stern, to work in a field and make a living out of it at that time where people didn't appreciate that artwork, and yet continue to make art under those circumstances. And so this thing is called A Visit to a Battle Site, for instance. And it reflects on the landscape near Kimberley, where there was a large battle between the British soldiers and the Afrikaner Boer soldiers. It was a celebrated battle because it was at that place, Magersfontein, where the Boer soldiers dug trenches and they beat the British soldiers completely, although there was a huge amount of them. And essentially, because they were in trenches, they couldn't shoot them, and these British soldiers were participating as they would traditionally by marching forward, and they were sort of shot. And those poor soldiers that didn't get shot but ducked and fell down onto the ground were burnt by the sun, because every time they picked up. So in a sense, this image is a sort of artistic interpretation of the experience of going to this battle site, seeing the red sand, and these sort of totemic figures representing these spirits that still live in this place. Gerard Socata, probably one of our celebrated modern black painters, he came into prominence in the 40s in South Africa, and you can imagine the early 40s in this country, how difficult life was, particularly for black people under the regime at the time. And then to decide to become a full-time painter was a significant step. But he was quite successful in South Africa, and his paintings sold quite well through galleries, and eventually traveled off to France, because at that time France was the sort of mecca of painting, and that's where you would go. What is actually the sculpture about? You have a table with 4 chairs, there's nobody there. The obvious examples that they've left behind, and what they get for dinner is a pistol shooting off. A plate of violence, in a sense, domestic violence. And the artist's title for this work is Gaste, or Guests. And it was a sort of commemoration at the time. When he produced this work, there were a number of highly publicized domestic violence incidents where a husband would kill his whole family, and there would be these family murders in Pretoria, and there were quite a few of them. In a sense, this is sort of a memorial in a way, to get people to contemplate what actually goes on in those very domestic settings, which we prefer not to talk about. But through art you can, in a sense, start contemplating that. This selection of work, as I said, is put together essentially thematically. They're from very different periods. So the work here called Song of the Pick is from 1938, and The Harvesters by George Pemba is from 1976. And this is a fairly recent work from 2004 by a young artist called Ricky Dialloy. They all deal with labor in some way, the hard work of making a living or working as a road worker, getting picks, but it's monumentalized. These figures are in some sense heroic, in the same sense that Mr. Dialloy has painted his rubbish picker as heroic and standing up. And this all happens within 50, 60 years. And it's incredibly diverse, but also still very relevant.
After the break, we take it back to nature, where we find out how we can relax at this end of the year.
Inspiring words from Utata. He also said, sometimes it falls upon a generation to be great.
We can be that generation. Global Citizen is calling on you to continue this legacy. So take action. End extreme poverty by 2030.
Together, we can end hunger, gender inequality, and preventable disease. But it takes action. Tweet, sign petitions, send emails, volunteer in your community.
Ask world leaders to make meaningful commitments and join a global community dedicated to change. You can help every child access a quality education and every person access clean water.
Your actions could earn you tickets to Global Citizen Festival Mandela 100, hosted and presented by the Motsepe Foundation at the FNB Stadium on the 2nd of December. It's going to be epic.
So be the generation. Take action now. See you there.
The Great Bank Heist. It was brazen. It was quick.
One thought we're perhaps looking at figures much, much lower. Right. It's almost 2 billion.
It was shared amongst very greedy VBS executives and politically connected individuals. You are listed in that report. Did you steal money?
The narrative that they're trying to create is proven wrong by Advocate Mtao's report himself. He said in point 59 that he could not find a definitive wrongdoing, anything factually.
The misleading information which Daily Maverick has is deliberate. It's part of the whole propaganda machinery. You can challenge this Polly Van Veil to bring us the so-called evidence that I received 10 million. It's pure insanity.
Is there any prospect whatsoever of saving VBS?
We are not as confident as we were when we started the curatorship as to restoring the bank.
The bank is in a hopeless situation and it cannot be saved.
Buildings, submerged homes and devastated families.
Biggest earthquake in here.
Their homes and buildings moved like boats.
Big shake, and I ran as fast as I can.
These are the satellite images depicting the area before the disaster.
The ground is like a wave.
I've never seen anything like this in my life.
It is unbelievable. You can actually smell the stench of dead bodies around.
The National Hurricane Center said earlier on Tuesday that Michael was a Category 1 storm with sustained winds of up to 150 kilometers per hour. Residents were implored to get out of harm's way ahead of life-threatening waves, winds and rains. Flash flooding over the weekend caused 13 deaths in Central America after Michael formed off the coast of northern Honduras.
Welcome back to Trendz Travel. Right now we take you to the lovely Shepstone Gardens in Johannesburg, where we learned how to use nature to combat the year-end fatigue.
There is no better time to connect and be in touch with nature than at sunrise, and that is exactly what we did. We spent a delightful morning at one of the most attractive gardens in Johannesburg with a group of individuals who are inspired by nature. The morning kicked off with a relaxing meditation session.
I am a yoga teacher. I've been teaching kids for 12 years now. What inspires me about nature is that us and nature are twins. There is no nature without us. There is no us without nature.
We took a winding stroll in the garden and explored nature while creating a hand scrub with a variety of plants.
Look at them. Look at my hands. We made our own hand scrub using natural ingredients. I feel like the skin is glowing. Didn't even put hand lotion on, but the skin is glowing. So mine had lemon, sugar, brown sugar. There was mint, rosemary, rose petals, thyme, basil, and all of these were crushed together. We added aloe gel, and we also added argan oil, and we crushed it together in a little pestle and mortar, and then we got the scrub. And so we had a hand massage with the scrub with all the goodness in it. I think you could eat it.
Nature and health are two elements that go hand in hand with our well-being. Nature has even proven to reduce our stress levels. This event was hosted and had guest speakers that encourage us to be inspired by the environment, landscape, and flora and fauna.
The morning is all about inspiring us to get out of the rat race and to return to nature so that we can de-stress, so that we can avoid things like fatigue and burnout. And we had a number of speakers. It was hosted by Dr. Ella Manga. I've worked with her before doing breath work. I'm reading her book called Breathe. I work in a very stressful environment, radio, television, running a business, and sometimes you end up just purely running on stress. So you need to remember to pause a little bit, to breathe, to recharge. So I'm increasingly going out into the bush. I'm doing hikes, I meditate, and I do yoga as part of just resetting, because if you're running on adrenaline, you're going to start to lose your mind and you're not doing your body any benefit.
Our challenge now in our modern lives is to start to integrate recovery loops into our day to re-establish our body's natural rhythm and thus natural energy. And so when we're in nature, we naturally connect with more authentic energy and natural energy. We're more in the moment, and you know, nature is part of us, we are part of nature. And so we're connecting to our natural selves when we're in nature.
And then we got to hear from Ntabi Taukobong, who herself experienced burnout and a lack of inspiration from the kind of work that she was doing. Taking 2 years out, I think you're in a fortunate position if you get to be able to take 2 years out from your life, from your career, from your life, to go and start afresh and to find new inspiration. And she came back better and stronger. I appreciated that vulnerability. And I think it's important that we hear more of those stories about how you can reclaim yourself, how you can revive your spirit, revive your energy by returning to nature.
Design doesn't have to only be technical or luxury. The luxury of today is stepping outside, it's connecting with nature, it's pure living, it's authentic living, it's finding items in nature that you can bring in so that you can balance, center and harmonize yourself, such as wood, water, air and earth, which is fire, and finding a way that those can sing into your whole, into your soul, and how you can then adapt those into your living lifestyle. As a designer, it's connecting to the source so that you can design from the womb, from the creativity, and you can birth new ideas. So I'm inspired by nature because, first of all, I'm African, and nature is a big part of our lives here. The luxury of being in Africa is being able to enjoy all seasons, indoor and outdoors. So that guides my design principles and helps me connect interiors with soul and pure authenticity for my clients.
And then Mpotsu Kudu is a dietitian who's written a book called Eat Ting. Love her book because it reminds us, particularly as Africans, to go back to eating the way our grandmothers used to eat. Ting, fermenting food, looking to grains like sorghum, as well as others, and that slow cooking. that we're accustomed to, instead of eating takeaways all the time, because once again it doesn't benefit your body, and if you're stressed you're still not getting the maximum amount of benefit.
Ever wondered why we mostly feel exhausted as we draw closer to the end of the year? Well, Dr. Manga has identified recovery loops that we can implement daily to help ease the tension.
Don't wait for December. I think that we have a culture where we work ourselves to death waiting for December, and when December comes all those stress hormones crash and then we get sick. It's called the letdown effect. So this idea of integrating recovery loops every day, every month, every quarter, and to make that a formula and to strategize and to plan our recovery loops is something that we need to think about. Well, the number one is of course the breath, because it's always there. I don't have to go to a special place, or I don't have to have a special environment. All I have to do is turn to my breath that is already there. And by turning towards the breath, I can start to use it in a way that is naturally going to calm me down. So just by slowing my breath down, I'm sending very powerful messages to my body that I'm now relaxed, that I'm at ease, and the body can start to rejuvenate itself.
Next time you're feeling low on energy, take a second, breathe, find your best recovery loop and connect with the best medicine for your body. And that, of course, is nature.
And that's all we have here in this week's edition of Trendz Travel. As usual, I was your host, Eloise Goebel. We'll see you again next week, same time, same place. Don't forget to catch us on Twitter and on Instagram, on Trendz and SABC using the hashtag SABC News.
The great bank heist. It was brazen. It was quick.
One thought we're perhaps looking at figures much, much lower. Right. It's almost 2 billion.
It was shared amongst very greedy VBS executives and politically connected individuals. You are listed in that report. Did you steal money?
The narrative that they're trying to create is proven wrong by Advocate Mtao's report himself. He said in point 59 that he could not find a definitive wrongdoing, anything factually.
The misleading information which Daily Maverick has is deliberate. It's part of the whole propaganda machinery. You can challenge this fanfare to bring us the so-called evidence that I received 10 million. It's pure insanity.
Is there any prospect whatsoever of saving VBS?
We are not as confident as we were when we started the curatorship as to restoring the bank.
The bank is in a hopeless situation and it cannot be saved.
SABC is independent and impartial, and it's important that as we deliver the news, we do so without fear, without favour, without prejudice, and that we ensure that we get the multiplicity of views so that our stories and coverage is balanced.
We pride ourselves on being impartial as well as independent. On the agenda, we basically break down the stories of the day, give it more substance and give it more detail. So all in all, we basically take the news agenda of the day forward.
But more than that, we'll be able to reflect the stories of ordinary folk, people who are trying to make ends meet, facing the most incredibly difficult obstacles and circumstances, and that they will find that their realities are expressed on the SABC.
To be a part of something like this makes me proud, and I think that to be able to report the news in a fair, just, independent and impartial way is what the public broadcaster stands for.